Well, a new day has dawned, and yesterday afternoon, after stopping where we left off in this video, I decided to continue studying more about this car. I had already studied more, I had studied before, and I had also consulted my friend Pierre a lot with ChatGPT-4, GPT-4, the workshop manual and other forums to try to isolate the problem. Well, let's see, the symptoms are clear. We have two warning lights for the coolant that is leaking. You pour in coolant, but it ends up leaking all of it out, and it ends up leaking all of it out mixed with oil. Okay. It mixes coolant with oil and also leaks it out. Okay. It mixes it more than in the expansion tank. It mixes it in the crankcase itself and such, I think. That's what you have to look for. Okay. Those are the symptoms. And then it also tells us, the oil pressure is red, look at the workshop. Go to the workshop. I also think that it's because the oil level sensor is broken, but right now that's what worries me the least. What worries me is detecting what the problem is. So, from less problematic to more problematic, the question is the following. In the best case scenario, there's a fault in the oil cooler or in the heat exchanger. And it's said one way or the other, in such a way that when there's a crack or some internal leak in the oil cooler, it causes the oil to mix, and then the seals may be bad and it leaks. But first we have to see where it leaks. Okay. That would be the best case scenario, because in that case it would be changing the oil cooler exchanger, which I have it there. I've already bought it, cleaning the entire cooling circuit. Okay. Changing the oil filter, putting in a not too expensive one and such, driving a few kilometers and doing that operation 2 or 3 times, so that we can thoroughly clean all the internal mayonnaise that may have remained, even, removing the crankcase from below, cleaning everything well and such. In other words, it would be more a problem of cleaning all the mayonnaise that has remained than the breakdown itself. That would be the best case scenario. Hopefully that's it, and I want to trust that it is that, because it usually fails in these cars, because it's what I want. It's the cheapest, and because in principle it looks good. Why does it look good? Because before buying the car I measured the compression of the 4 cylinders and it was good. It was between 12 and 12.5, measured at an altitude of 11 meters, that is, it was really around 13, which is perfect compression, and the car has 320,000 kilometers and the compression was perfect. It wasn't very high either, which could be a symptom of another type of fault. In other words, based on compression, it doesn't seem like there's a problem, and so that would initially make me rule out the next option, which is the cylinder head gasket. Everyone thinks, at first I would think it's the cylinder head gasket, okay? If it's not the cylinder head gasket, it would be worse. It would be a crack or a fissure in the cylinder head, and in the worst case, a crack or fissure in the engine block. But since this is cast iron and the cylinder head is aluminum, that would be very unlikely. The real issue is between the heat exchanger, hopefully, or the cylinder head gasket. So, what I'm going to do before anything else, before starting it up again and such, is to do several tests. I've already done the compression test. The compression of the cylinders is good. The next thing I'm going to do, and for this I bought a specific case, is to test the tightness of the cooling system. We're going to put air in it under pressure and see if it holds pressure or not. If it doesn't hold pressure, it means there's a problem with the tightness that shouldn't be there because it's leaking oil. But maybe now that I put pressure on it, I'll see more clearly where it's leaking, because right now I don't know where it's leaking, which is the issue. After doing that test, which I'm sure will be negative, I'm very clear about it, the next thing I'm going to do is do the CO2 test, okay? That is, I will start the engine, and when it is a little warm we will put the specific device here with the blue reagent to see if it passes. It changes color from blue to green or yellow. If I am lucky it does not change color from blue or yellow. It is not 100% significant that it is not a cylinder head gasket, but there would be 2 tests for which we would have less probability that it was a cylinder head gasket. Why? On the one hand, I do not have, I have good compression. I would not have CO2 in the cooling system, which would be a good symptom. And also, it does not emit white smoke. When I start the car, it does not emit white smoke. These would be 3 indications that in principle it is not the cylinder head gasket and it would make us focus more on the heat exchanger. However, all this is a bit to do the specific research work, understand the problems well and such, because I am definitely going to change the heat exchanger. I've already bought it, it's a bit of work, but it has to be done. What I simply want to know is what my expectations are once I change it, whether the problem will be resolved or whether the problem will continue, okay? So, that's what we're going to do now. In other words, the first step is to do the leak test, which we're going to do now. The second step is to do the CO2 test, which we'll do next, but with the engine running, and also checking to see if it emits white smoke or not. And once we've done those 2 tests, then I'll try with the engine running, and after having done the CO2 test, to see with the flashlight and such, if I have to remove the entire intake part of the box, the L filter, the LD filter, this thing, it's a bit of a hassle from what I've seen in videos and what I've seen in the workshop manual, but come on, it's not something to get too crazy about. Okay, so the story is that, okay, so I insist, I'll do that to see if we can see where it goes, where it really loses the oil, where the oil leaks from, where it expels the oil, and finally, we'll get into, and that would be the next video. All of these are going to be about the previous tests, and the second video in the series is going to be about how to change the heat exchanger that's done underneath, okay. That's why the car is raised up. Well, for that and to see where the oil leaks. So, the next video is going to be about how to change the radiator, the oil cooler. It's called either an oil cooler or an oil radiator or a heat exchanger. Those 3 terms are the ones that are usually used to refer to the same part that I'm going to show you now, okay? But that's for the next video. So we're going to do the leak test of the cooling circuit. Okay, friends, now let's see the leak test of a cooling circuit. It helps me continue with this video about the car, and it also helps me make a specific video about this kit that serves 2 purposes. I'll leave a link to buy this kit in the description of the video, okay? It has a dual purpose, it's super practical, and if you're always busy with mechanical things about your cars and such, it's 100% recommended, okay? It's used to perform a leak test on the coolant circuit, which is why we have this pump and the different couplings that fit either to the radiator if it has a radiator cap, which is very good for motorcycles, or directly to the expansion tank, okay. It has a coupling to put the coupling here, I insist, either the expansion tank if it has an expansion tank or the radiator cap if it has a radiator. In order to apply pressure to the circuit through this pump, it is necessary to apply pressure between 13 and 16 psi, more or less, and this pressure must be maintained for at least half an hour. In other words, this test involves applying pressure, waiting for about half an hour, and if the pressure has not been lost in half an hour, it means that the cooling circuit does not have any leaks, either at the hoses, joints, the cylinder head gasket itself, the heat exchanger, or cracks in the radiator. The radiator may have them in many places. With this, first, we know if it has a leak, and second, by applying pressure and observing the entire cooling circuit, it is easier to see where the leak is and correct it. Okay? So, in order to measure the tightness of the cooling circuit, function number 1, function number 2, to be able to fill the coolant. When we want to change the coolant, it is very easy to drain the coolant, but then when we replace it with new one, the difficulty is always in purging the air. There are cars that have a bleeder and through a system. You have here a lot of my videos where we have always bled it manually. With this system, which is through this little device here, what we do is we avoid that purge because it directly injects the coolant without any air. Therefore, we are changing the coolant without running the risk of it having a bubble and that air bubble causing the cooling system not to work properly, overheating and so on. That is why the air must be bled. With this system we avoid purging the air because no air enters when topping up and changing the coolant. That is the story. Okay? So, now we are going to see how it works to see how tight this car is. You see it comes with 3 different caps. For the liquids, that is, for the radiators. It comes with a universal one. In case none of the caps work with this universal one, we could fix it. It comes with a little key to properly close the coupling, you see? It comes with an external thread, with an internal thread. It comes for a lot of car models, okay? There is also an additional coupling here in case we need to connect something we already have. It comes with a thermometer. Okay, here we have the coolant temperature thermometer. The car's cooling system leak test must always be done cold, okay? With the engine cold, with the coolant cold, very important to do it correctly and to avoid any problems or accidents, okay? And then it also comes with these 2 couplings, which are to test the leak-proofness of the radiator caps themselves. The radiator itself can lose its leak-proofness, or the cap that it has here, because this little thing and such can have leak-proofness problems in. These are used to measure whether the cap is good or not. And if the cap is not good, then we can change it for another cap, okay? With that we can check it. That's all that comes to us. And here it comes with those rubbers, with those transparent tubes that we use to take the new coolant and put it in the car through suction and pressure, okay? By vacuum, okay? Well, and then it comes with this little instruction manual. That's the deal. So very good. I'll leave you, I insist, in the description of the video a link to buy it, but I think this is a very important kit to have. Look. And here we also have the instruction manual for which car models and brands each of the couplers corresponds to. This is a Mercedes C180 compressor sport coupe, so I understand that it's going to be, let's see where it says here Mercedes C-Class, okay? The 13 Mercedes class here, that is, it's going to be this one, the 13, that we have here. Let's see if it's true that this one corresponds to this one. Let's see. Okay, it's also important to know how much pressure you really need to put into the system, depending on each car brand, model, etc. Theoretically, we should find that in the workshop manual, because if we put more pressure than necessary, we could break a component, and that wouldn't be desirable at all. Okay, well, it was indeed 13. And now with this little key here, this one here, we can close it a little better, so that we can make sure, you see, we put it here and we're making sure, okay, that it closes and that we have a perfect seal on the cap. Okay, well, let's put the pump in and put in about 16p6. Let's see what we see. Well, we've already put the quick coupling on. This is to release the pressure, okay? And now, as if we were trying to inflate the bicycle wheel. Let's keep adding pressure until we reach about a bar with one like that, that is, I'm going to put in about 16p6, okay? About 16p6. Watch as I'm adding pressure, watch the water level. It's gone down a lot. Okay, I'm going to top it up with more water, so the water is just being expelled just because of the pressure here. You don't see it going down much, but you have to leave it for half an hour to see the difference. Okay, I'm going to add more water anyway and put it back on pressure. Okay, look, I've already filled it up to that point with water. I'm using water now because since it's all gone, it's silly to spend money on throwing away the coolant, and once everything is properly repaired, I'll add coolant, of course, okay? I mean, just putting water in for a little while doesn't hurt. It's very dangerous to leave water in the car for a long time because it rusts all the components. Water doesn't have the necessary properties that coolant has, okay? Or antifreeze. But to do these tests, it won't be necessary to do it with water, okay? And not to waste money foolishly. Well, look, I've filled it up to this level. It's filled up to this level. I'm even going to try to make a little mark so we can see how much it drops now once we put pressure on it. Okay, look, I've made a little mark right above where the water level is. And now we're going to see how much it loses. Okay, come on, let's inflate it. Phew, it's losing all the water through there. The level is dropping completely. I'm going to show it. Look, we're almost at a bar. Do you see? We're at a bar. And look, you see where the mark was and where the water was. It's throwing it all out. What we have to see is where. I'm going to see if I can see where it's throwing it out. Okay, like this with this pressure. So far, it looks like it's going down. It's not going down. It's right at a bar. Alexa, what time is it? Good afternoon. Jay. It's 12:39 in the afternoon. 12:39. Okay, Alexa, let me know.
At 1 p.m. now, let's talk about the afternoon.
Okay, let's give it 20 minutes to see if there's been a drop. There's no drop while we see where it's leaking. To look, I got under the car to see if I could see. I blowtorched everything a little so that any water that might have been there before and such doesn't confuse us. Right now, at the moment I'm not seeing any leaks anywhere, or drips anywhere. Here we have the heat exchanger. Look, you see where the left wheel is. There's the left wheel, the heat exchanger. Do you see? This is part of the steering rod. The heat exchanger is, there it is. There, okay. And there's absolutely no dripping there. Conclusion, bad sign for what I want. I mean, because if I don't see any dripping now, theoretically it means water is getting into the engine oil. Theoretically in the engine, in the crankcase, although it could also be through the heat exchanger. Well, I don't want to speculate too much about things I don't know anything about. I'm just going to limit myself to observing and describing. For now, I'm going to keep testing, I'm going to keep describing, we're going to keep observing and we're going to come to conclusions. Okay, at the moment, with that pressure of 1 bar, it's not leaking at all. I'm going to put a little more pressure on it, okay? Looking at what I've seen, I see that nothing is leaking anywhere. I'm going to put more pressure on it. Look, after 10 minutes, in principle, it's lost a little bit of pressure. It was at just 1, depending on the angle from which you look at it. Yes, I lost a little bit, a tiny bit, but of course, you have to leave it for half an hour, which I'm going to leave for half an hour without any problem. However, I'm going to put more pressure on it. I'm going to go up to 1.5 bars. This would be the pressure that it's lost now. Good, yes, seen up close. I'm going to put in 1.5 bars. Okay, I put in a little less than 1.5 bars. I'm going to leave it there, a little less than 1.5 bars. Okay, with the reflection, you can't see it well. There, look at this line below, where it had stopped after putting pressure on it, and it's gone down a little more here. I'm going to put the third blue line, which would be the level now, where the water has stopped after putting in 1.5 bars. Okay, I've done that third line, which is where the water level has stopped after I put in half a bar of pressure, and I'm going to go down there to see if I see any leaks there. At the moment, I can't see anything here, up here in the pipes. I'm going to keep evaluating it, and if I see anything, I'll let you know. Okay, after looking around for almost 20 minutes with a pressure of 1.5 bars, you can't see any drips anywhere. Nad cleans everything up a bit and such. And no, you can't see anything, you can't see any drips anywhere. So I imagine that's going directly into the crankcase. Okay, now I'm going to start it up and do the CO2 test and see if I can see where the mixed oil is leaking while it's hot. Okay. So, okay, I'm going to go up, start the car and do the CO2 test. Well, after 25 minutes, I haven't been able to see any water loss anywhere. And looking at this, in 25 minutes it's gone down from what we had a little below 1.5 to this. This is all the pressure it's lost in 25 minutes. So it's assumed that all that is going in there or in the cylinder head or in the crankcase or I don't know. I don't really know what to think. Okay, so now what we're going to do is remove this. The leak test is finished and indeed the cooling system is not leaking, and in principle it's leaking in because right now it's not leaking out or I can't see it. There's no dripping down there. I've dried everything here beforehand and I don't see any dripping. Now we're going to do the CO2 test, okay? So, I'm going to remove the pressure here. Okay, done. See? When I remove the pressure, the water level goes up a little bit. Okay, great. Well, okay, let's remove all this to remove this from here. It just gets stuck quickly, okay? I need both. I'll put everything away and let's do the CO2 test. Well, now we're going to do the test, the CO2. We simply put this tool here, we try to tighten it as much as we can. It's already tight there. Okay. Then we put the little thing up here and add half of the blue liquid. The thing is, so it doesn't get dirty, I'm going to start the car first and then I'm going to put it in. Okay, I'm going to start the car first and then I'll put it in. And I'm going to leave it running for a little while to see if we can see where it goes. Apart from the CO2 issue, let's see where it goes. What do you call this? The mixed oil. With the engine oil level warning, take it to the shop. Okay, well, I'm going to see how the leak test goes. Let's see how much smoke it smokes when starting it. It did emit a lot of white smoke, didn't it? A lot when starting it. But now this is the level of smoke it emits. Okay, so I've already added the damn blue. And if it turns green or yellow together, it means there's CO2 in there. At the moment it's not changing color if I leave it like that for 5 minutes. At the moment, this is some indication that it hasn't changed color. As you can see, the car sounds good. The engine doesn't make any strange sounds. And this is the level of smoke it's emitting, do you see? There's white smoke. Yes, there's water. That's the water that's coming out of there. And that's because the water must be there in the pistons or in the combustion chamber or something. I'm going to go down there and see what I see. Look, it's coming out of there, mayonnaise right there. Let's see if I can see exactly where. It's clear that it's not because of the heat exchanger and it's over here, up to the top it's burned. Do you see? That's where it's done it. And this is what it's coming out of. Do you see how this has turned half green? This has turned half green. I mean, no, it's not blue, it's not yellow, but it's half green and that's a bad indicator. It's indicative of the okay. This is the color it has after 5 minutes. Okay, that's the color it has after 5 minutes. And I can't see where the oil is leaking. It's leaking here. Do you see? Above the air in the air conditioning fuel, it's coming from the river. Look, this is the color that stayed. At first glance, that looks like an oil cooler. Okay. Come on, I'm going to turn the car off now. Look, this is the color that has turned green compared to this blue. This clearly indicates that it's taking in CO2. White smoke was coming out of the back. In other words, it's basically a recoil starter and not a heat exchanger. Okay, there's the green. Okay, however, I'm going to change the heat exchanger and I'm going to test it. What I need to see is where it's losing oil. For that, I have to remove this thing here, okay? Because it was at the level of the air conditioning compressor. In other words, it's losing it on this side here. We have to remove this, no matter what. Okay, come on, I'm going to remove it. And I'll consider this finished with this color.